So today we're doing Daf Tesvav, Daf Design Omid Aleph. Right. We're right now in the middle of we're doing the last line or two. We'll also be doing the last line or two from Tesvav on the base. Right now in the middle of the discussion whether Parot Ka'oimed, if the mechitza, the broken amount, is equal to the amount of the mechitza which is standing, if it's mutter to carry or it's osir. Papa says it's mutter to carry, and Rav Huna says it's osir to carry. If it's equal, if it's roiv, it's mutter to carry. If it's roiv, if it's roiv with Parot, it's for sure osir to carry. The machlekes of Rav Papa and whenever they're sure is if it's equal, the Parot is equal to the Oimed. So now we're going to bring a raya to Rav Papa. Let's see. Toshma. This is the last line and a half from the Daf Tesvav base. Shayora, a caravan, Chonsa bebika, which they camped in a valley. Vikifur big malin. So they made the mechitza around the camp. There's no the dinner. The bika has a dinner with Carmelis, so they made a mechitza there where they camped in the middle of it. So the mechitza is big malim. There's camels, a part of the mechitza, beukfin, saddles, ba'avitin. That's the cushions which go underneath the saddle. That's called avitin. Shlifin is the luggage. Kanin is sticks. Like bamboo sticks type of thing, but koilchois, that is the food, vegetables, bunches of vegetables, because it's all their luggage and all their stuff and the food, and they made with all that. They made that into a mechitza. Obviously, that it's all these different items. They're not exactly matching to each other, and therefore there's going to end up being spaces, and they're not exactly square or whatever it is. Therefore, it's quite rough, and therefore there's going to be spaces of between one piece item to the other item, which is making the fence. So it's okay. It's considered a mechitza. But he has to make sure they should not have between one camel and another camel the amount of how much a camel is, because the gomel is considered a mechitza, but the break between a gomel and a gomel shouldn't be the size of a gomel. Should make sure it should not be that between one saddle and another saddle is the size of an ukev, or ben ovid la'ovid kimle ovid. Right. So that's the idea, that you should make sure that that you don't have that the gap between these items are as big as the item. So so we see from over here that so from see from over here that if it's the same size, as the gap is the same size as the gomel, so then you are not permitted to carry. That's not by proper. Sorry, from the Brisa would bring a raya not like a proper. Would bring a raya that if it's the open area would be the same amount. Like I says, you shouldn't have the size of a camel, but between the camel. And so that means that if you have the space, the size of a camel, which is equal to the camel, that would not be kosher and not kosher mechitza. So we see that if the parts, the open part, is equal to the mechitza which is standing, it's not considered a good mechitza, which is like a good Rabbi Yeshua, and against Rav Papa. So it's a kasha on Rav Papa. So the Gemara says no. Yes, when we're speaking about the gap, you shouldn't have the gap of between one gomel and another gomel. You shouldn't have the gap the size of a gomel. It does not mean that if they have the size of a gomel between one camel and another camel, it's not a good mechitza. It means that if you can put in a gomel between one gomel and another gomel, then it's not good mechitza. Now, to put in a gomel, you need more than the space of a gomel, because always, if it's exact the same, if the item you're putting in is exact same size as the gap, it will not fit in. You can't put in. So the gap always has to be a bit larger than the item which you're putting in. So therefore, the measurement which disqualifies it as a mechitza should be understood. So we're learning the brisa, we should understand it doesn't mean the space of a gomel. It means that you should be able to put in a gomel. I think I said these words, that you're able to put it in and take it out. That means that in actual fact, the gap is a bit more than a gomel, and that's why it's possible, because the porotz is more than the oimen. But had it been equal, it would be kosher. So we've answered, and it's not a kasha on the pot. Now, Toshma, another kasha. Now, what I'm going to do is I think I'm going to learn this brisa, and then I'm going to go over the brisa again to make out to go over the brisa a second time in order to explain the points which are relevant to the kasha and teretz. But first, to learn the brisa, what the brisa is saying. Toshma. Nimtzas ha'omer, so it comes out sholish midas mechitzas, the three measurements, the three principles, three measurements of mechitzas, and they have different dinim. The three measurements have different dinim. There is actually, in this brisa, there is actually 4 types of dinim, but the fourth one is not about the mechitza, it's about the gap. So, but in the mechitza, there's actually 3 types of mechitzas which have different dinim, and then after you have the fourth dinim. Okay. Now, what's the first one? Kol shel pachas mishloisha. If the mechitza is made out of planks or whatever they are, which are less than 3 tefachim. So planks or bars, metal bars or wooden bars, it doesn't make a difference. Yeah. So if it has bars which are less than 3 tefachim, and then there is a gap. This is something a tefach or something, or half a tefach, and then you have a gap. Then you put in another stake of a tefach or half a tefach, etc. So kol shul pachas mishloisha. So if this plank or whatever, the bar which you put with the pole which you're putting in is less than 3, sorry, shelo yehei ben zeh lezeh shloisha. So between one bar and another bar, or one plank and the other plank, it should not be a 3 tvachim, because as long as there's no 3 tvachim there, we can apply the principle of lavud, and therefore lavud means it's if it's connected. So if we have many times we have fencing. Fencing is made out of the bars or poles which are at a distance from each other, but it's a fence. And as long as as it's less than 3 tvachim, the gap is less than 3 tvachim, so it's considered negate to. Didn't explain to say what word. Negate to hilchos kolayim. By the way, we're not talking about, this is not hilchos Shabbos, it's hilchos kolayim. But negate to hilchos kolayim, it's considered as if we say lavud, as if it's a fence. The gaps, we do not consider the gap. The gaps are not considered as a gap. It's considered a fence because it's less than 3 tvachim. I forgot to explain that. But concerning kitloim, the halacha is that if we grow next to a vineyard, you have to grow wheat. You have to have a distance between them. It shouldn't be kiloim. But if you have a mechitza, then you can have the vineyard and the wheat growing right next to each other on either side of the mechitza. So therefore, if you have a mechitza, you can actually have them growing close together, and it's not considered being mixed up. So therefore, we need to know what's a proper mechitza. So if you can apply the klal of lavud, it does not apply to 3 tvachim. It's below 3 tvachim. If it's less than 3 tvachim, then we apply the principle of lavud. Fine. What's this? That if it's less than 3 tvachim, so the goat can't go through. The bas rosh means easily or clearly or quite naturally, whatever is the Basra. The Basra means it just goes. It's quite normal for it to go through without too much difficulty. So that's the concept. So because if it's any area which the goats go through, the fact that the goats are able to go through, that disqualifies it from being considered a chitza. Okay, but that's klal number one, where we apply the lovud, where we apply the din of lovud to make it a chitza, right? And the poles themselves are less than 3 tefach. Then we have the next one, kol shehu gimel umigimel adalet. Okay, the planks or the poles, the planks are from 3 tefachim, not less than 3 tefachim. They're from 3 tefachim till 4, less than 4. So if it's from 3 upwards till 4, so then so then we can actually make the mechitza a bit bigger. We can have the gaps between the planks a bit more, because since we can apply the principle of oimed merubah ala parotz, so therefore in the first scenario you had the maximum you could apply was that is the principle of lavot, which means the lavot only works for a gap which is less than 3 tefach. Here we can have a larger gap, and we can still say it's considered part of the mechitza. Why? Because since you have the plank is of 3 tefachim, so therefore you can have it even bigger than even the gap is more than 3 tefachim. You'll be able to consider it as part of the mechitza, but that'll be based on a different ruling, the ruling of parutz. Of oimed merubah ala parutz. So it's based on the oimed merubah ala parutz. Let's read it and see how it says, because we have this whole. It says tzorich shelo yehei ben zeh lezeh. So it's as long as it's kimilui. So if you don't have between one plank and the other plank as the filling of a plank, the size of a plank, you don't have the between one plank and another plank is not as much as the size of the plank. That you should not have the broken part should be as much as the standing part. So then it's still, so even the gaps will be considered as part of the chitza. So the gaps can be considered part of the chitza as long as it's there's not the gap is not as large as the size of the plank. Which means that it should not be the same size as the plank. We'll get back to this translation of this word a bit later. Then it says, but if the parutz is merubah ala, that the gap is larger than what's standing, so then that's not considered the mechitza, and you cannot carry the whole. Sorry, not carrying. I'm talking about carrying. You cannot. It's not a mechitza, and you cannot plant the things close to each other at all. Af keneged ha'oimid also. So even let's say I'm putting a bit of wheat over here, and the mechitza, right? The wheat is right next to the mechitza. In other words, it's behind the mechitza, or that plank of the mechitza. So even though the plank is actually separating, there's this plank separating the wheat from the vineyard, it will not be good. Since if it's parutz merubah ala, the entire mechitza, if the mechitza is that it's parutz merubah ala, so then even what's standing is not considered the mechitza, and so even you have there is the plank of wood is separating between the vineyard and the chita and the wheat. It's not going to be it's not a good mechitza, and it's going to be considered kloy. But that's only if the plank is less than 4. The kol shehu dalad u'me'arba'at eser ames. But if if it's 4 till 10 amas. So if the mechitza is from 4 till 10 amas, so if it's from 4 and above, the kitzer from 4 and above. One second. We would I see, right. So we've done the 3 mechitzas. We've done the one type of mechitza is less than 3, and one second. What have we done here? The one is from the one type of mechitza. The second type of mechitza is from 3 to less than 4, and all right. Now we're doing the third type of mechitza. The third type of mechitza is kol shehu dalad. That if it's 4 tvachim ume'arba ad 10 amas, still 10 amas, tzarich shelo yehei bein zeh lezeh kimilui. So shelo yehei parotz ka'omed. Again, we're going to apply the principle of parotz and oimed. So if there's more oimed than parotz, that you don't have the gap. You don't have the gap between one part of the mechitza to the other part of the mechitza as much as the mechitza itself. So if it's that it's the parotz is not like the amount as it is standing. Right. So then it's good, a good mechitza. As long as shloyeh parotz kaimed, it's a good mechitza. And so even the place where the gap is will also be considered the mechitza. The im haya parotz kaimed, but if it is parotz kaimed, if the broken amount is like the amount outstanding, so then this is in this third instance is interesting that kneged ha'omed mutter, that the place where there is a partition standing, that part of it, you're allowed to plant on the other side of it. So if you have, let's say, 5 amas, so that you have the tree next to it, and then the other side you can have the piece of wheat growing over there. If it's the kids of 5 amas, but then you have a gap of, let's say, of 5 amas or 6 amas or whatever it is. So you have another gap. So but the gap, that's not considered mechitza, because it the im haya parotz ka'omed, it's keneged ka'omed muter, keneged parotz also. So the part which is fenced is considered mechitza. The part which is not fenced is considered not mechitza. That is the thing that we're differentiating between the fence, that not the whole mechitza has one din. Either it is mechitza or not mechitza. That there's a difference. The part of mechitza which is fenced is considered mechitza. The part which is not fenced is not considered mechitza. That applies only if you have a minimum size of 4 tvachim till 10 amas. Would be more about it. Yeah. So then, right. So once you have that size, so even if there's no oimed merub ala parot, still we the part which is fenced will be considered as a fenced part and the unfenced part. The im haya oimed merub ala parot. But if in this scenario where you have these large areas which are fenced, and but it's oimed merub ala parot, there's more fenced than broken. So then even the gap is considered av keneged parot's mutter. So even the gap is considered if even the gap is considered that you'll have to plant on both sides. Okay. Nifritza beyoisem eser. I think this is like an addition. If it's bichlal, if it's broken more than eser, if you have a break more than eser, so and it's also once you have a break more than eser, like we know from the whole time, that it's considered the pirza. Any break more than eser is considered the pirza. So then there's nothing to discuss. No oimen meruba, all these things they just fall away once you have a break more than 10 amps. Hoyesham another din. Hoyesham kanim had doikranim. If you had these sticks, which are pointy sticks and sharp sticks, so you push them into the ground. I guess the pointed part you push into the ground, and va'islam pei amil maila. And then on top of the you put a beam. You put a beam between one corner and another corner. In other words, you end up with a situation of a tzuras hapesach. So you have two beams, two pointed beams to the ground. Then on top you have this corner which is running along on top of them. No, if you have the Peil Mimaila, so then I feel it's a Tzuras HaPesach, so that's effective. I feel even it's more than 10 amas. Tzuras HaPesach is going to be okay. Then you can plant on both sides. Okay. I just want to go. I want to go. It's taking us a bit of time, but we have three cases. What we're focusing on is the second case and the third case. So Kosher Pachas we're not focusing on right now. We're focusing on from the Kosher Gimel Gimel Adalet. That's the second case we're focusing on now. And then we have the third case which we focus on, which is Kosher, which is the 4 and 4 till 10 amas. In other words, the first case, the principle there which was involved was Lobot. The second and third case, the principles which were involved there were Parotz and Oimed. If the majority is Parotz or majority is Oimed, that was involved with that. Now, quite frankly, if you look at all the other words, it seems the whole thing works against Rav Papa. If you look at, I'll just do very quickly. Let's see. I'm just going over again. So I'm starting from Kol Shehu Gimel Umigimel Adalet. If you don't have the same size as a gap as the part of the wall, then it's okay. It's okay as long as you don't have the gap the same size as the wall. So that goes against Rav Papa because he says if it's the same size of the wall, it's still considered the wall. And as he says, you should not have the gap as the same size as the wall. Then the second part of it actually is a little bit like Rav Papa, is a little bit like Rav Papa. The second part in the, by the way, the Gemara calls this Reisha. So this second din, the Gemara is going to call Reisha. In the second part of it says V'imhoyam parotz meruba la'omed af keneged ha'omed also. So it seems that if the parotz is more than the oimed, only then it's also. So if it's equal, that's mutter. That's like Rav Papa. So in this second din, which the Gemara calls the Reisha, it's a bit like Rabbi Shua. The last part of it is a little bit like Rav Papa. Okay. Now the next, let's have a look at the next one. Kol shehu dalad u'mirabod eser amas. Sorry, you should not have the gap as big as what the fence is. Right. So that is again against Rav Papa because he says it should not be equal. According to Rav Papa, even if it's equal, it's still called considered mechitza. And certainly the last part of it is certainly against Rav Papa. It says the imhaya parutz k'oimed. If imhaya parutz k'oimed is parutz k'oimed. So the imhaya parutz k'oimed. Then we don't say, we say kneged oimed, mutter kneged parutz also. So if it's parutz k'oimed, what do we say there? That the breaks are considered a break. If it's parutz k'oimed, we don't say that the break becomes bottle. It does not become bottle. The broken part is broken and the open part is open. So we do not say it becomes bottle. So also it seems to go against Rav Papa. Let me just point out something, and I'm going to do that now instead. And see, let's go back to I'm going back to the ratio, what the quote ratio, but it's the second halacha. That's what it says. Kosher gimel and gimel adalah. Now, kosher gimel and gimel adalah. It says you should not have the gap between one plank and the other, like kimiloy, like to fit a plank. So I said, as I said, the Pirush is it seems to be against Rav Papa because if you're not allowed to have it the same size as a plank, according to Rav Papa, if it's the same size as a plank, it's okay. Now, Rav Papa will answer. Rav Papa will answer that kimiloi does not mean the same size. He will answer kimiloi means that you can put in another plank of the same size. Now it's a bit more. Again, this nichnas v'yoytze business. So even though originally the Bryce, if we looked at it, it seemed except for one one line, all the Bryces seem to be favoring Eruvin Yeshua. But right now, so we're saying that the whole Vart, Papa will argue that the Vart Kimilui does not mean it's the same size as the plank, is the mechitza, which is there. Kimilui means you're able to put it in to fill it up, which is quite a reasonable argument to fill that be able to put it in and out, which means that the gap is actually bigger, and that's when it becomes possible. The only thing is, yes, the imahaya parrots berubal aimed that also that parrots berubal aimed also that sounds like a plot because it says parrots meruba ala aimed. It's possible. So that sounds like a papa, that if it's equal, then it's okay. That's the line which sounds like a papa. And okay, so that's by the way, so let's point out where that line is. That line is at the end of the second, the end of the ratio. It's the end of the ratio. In contrast, the end of the sefer, it says the imhoya parrots k'oimed. If the parrot is equal like an oimed, so if the parrot is equal like an oimed, so then it's not considered the mechitza. It says connected by mutter, connected parrots also. The standing part is okay. The parrot's part is also. It's not the broken part is not considered mechitza. The broken part does not become part to the thing. So therefore that is quite clearly like Rabbi Shua. So what we have over here is originally it all looks like Rabbi Shua, but if we start thinking into it, the argument of Rapapa, which he had in the previous brises, that we're talking about nichnas v'yoytze, so that the gaps it's a bit bigger. So then we've answered quite a bit of the brisa, but at the end of the day, there is a one-liner in the ratio, which is mamish like Rav Papa, the one-line ratio, and the one-liner in the sefer, which is mamish like Rav Huna. And you know what? So I guess we'll have to. I'm not guessing. I mean, that's what the Gemara says at the end. The end, the Gemara is going to say, you know what? Rav Papa, he focuses. He says the main point is the one line in the ratio, and then the whole brisa falls into place. And the sefer, the sefer just uses like a language is not so medaic. The language in the sefer is not so medaic. And the Rav Huna says, the one line in the sefer, that's more medaic. The one line in the ratio, that's not so medaic, and the rest of the brisa will fall into one of the show. I hope I'm able to explain it at some sort of level. Okay. And now go to the Gemara. So the Gemara says, it's a question of Papa. Katani Miyas, so we learn Reisha mit Gimel Adam. It says in the Reisha from 3 till 4 tvachim. That you shouldn't have the gap, should be as equal as the planks. So the gap is equal to the planks is no good. It's a kasher papa. Papa will tell you my milui. You know what milui means? Milui means you can fill it up. You can actually put it inside. And Hochinam Mistaber, actually, if you look carefully in the Brisa, you see that there's a one-liner right after this, which is like a puppet. It's it says right in the Brisa, if the parts the broken is more than the oimed, it's afkeneged oimed also. Then it's not good mechitza. Hokke oimed, that's kaim is mutter. So you see that the Bryce has actually put in a one-liner to clarify if you know exactly that Kimilui means exactly like a puppet. I don't make a mistake to think like Rabbi short, because that liner is mamish in the direction of a puppet. Shlamine. Okay. Shlamine. Okay. The Gemara said, okay, fine. Limit have it you to the short. Okay, this one-liner is a strong one. So this one-liner is like a kasher when the short. It points exactly like a puppet. So the Amalach is telling you, listen, Ultaimach. You know what? You have a question on me, on Rabbi Huna? I'll ask you a question, Rav Papa. Aim a sefer, when you ask me for the one-liner, I'm telling you there's a one-liner which is mamish against Rav Papa. Aim a sefer, look in the sefer. Im hoyo oimid beruba la parrots. Afkeneg la parrots mutter. Hokke parrots also. So when it says that only the oimid is more than the parrots, then the parrots is considered a good mechitza. Hokke parrots, but if it's equal, it's not the part which is broken is not a good mechitza. So therefore, so that one liner is exactly like me, not like Rav Papa. Right. Okay, so you must say, yeah, okay, you asked him back a good question. What should we do? Sefer kasher Rav Papa, Reisha kasher Rav Huna. The sefer is the one liner of the sefer is a kasher Rav Papa, and Reisha, the one liner of the Reisha is a kasher Rav Huna, but they're sure. So Gemara says sefer Rav Papa kasher. The sefer Papa is not kasher. The I did the Tana Reisha parts Rubala Im Tana Sefer Im the Rubala parts. Since he said the Reisha, he said parts Rubala Im. So that made very clear what the halacha is. That if it's equal, then it's a good mechitza. So Tana Sefer Im the Rubala parts. So the Sefer is not the Daik anymore, and he uses like a slightly different language because we're talking about the different situation. He changes the language, but he can't be Medaik. It's trying to say for and it's not the dike because he's already let you know in the safety, the ratio, he let you know exactly what you should look for. That if it's parrots is equal to it's kosher, and then the rest is not the dike anymore. Right. So therefore you can't be the dike the safer. The ratio the kasha what about the one line of the ratio? It's got the kasha kasha. I did the bottom safer even since the one liner in the safer has given it to you, tells you exactly what Allah is, clarifying you. So when in the end, in the conclusion of the brisa clarifies tells exactly what to focus on. Yeah. So the brisa tells a lot of things, but you should look at the end of the brisa to see what's the main focus. So the end brisa it comes to conclusion and gives you a kitzer and whatever. Not exactly, but that's where the focus is. That's what you should be medayik. You medayik is safer. When you medayik is safer, then the rest of the ratio doesn't have to be medayik so much. Tana ratio parts of it doesn't have to be medayik so much. Okay, so kitzer advarim. So that's how the discussion concerning the brisa, whether it's mashma like the proper or the Yeshua, and it's interesting that which part of the brisa will be both medayik more. According to, it seems like the prophet says you should medayik more and according to Rabbi Yeshua, you should focus more to be medayik in the sefer, and the rest, the Tanner lines that you'll understand how it falls into place. Okay. Now the Gemara asks a question. Contra to Rav Papa, understand that when it says that 3 tvachim, if the bechitza is 3 tvachim exactly, if the chitza, the poles, the planks are 3 tvachim exactly, you can't put it in the very first case. The case number 2, so it speaks about 3 planks of 3 tvachim and above till below 4. So the case of 3 cannot be in the first case because the contra papa, if it's the first case, if you have a plank of 3, so even if you have a gap of 3, it'll be kosher because according to Rav Papa, if it's equal, it's a good mechitza. So therefore, he's telling you where it's possible. So therefore, he can't put gimel the exactly 3 tvachim. He can't put it in the first case because the first case speaks about when the chisaron is with lovwood. Because it can't put in the first case because it will be kosher if you have the gap. If you have the plank 3, if you have the plank 3 and you have the gap 3, according to Rav Papa, it's kosher. So therefore, therefore, the first case says when you have the gap 3, it's possible. In the first case, you say when you have the gap 3, is possible. So therefore, if the plank is 3, it will be kosher. Why? Because of the principle of parutz ka'oime. Even though mitzad dine lovod, it should be possible, because by 3, up to 3 we say lovod. By 3 we don't say lovod. But mitzad the din of parutz ka'oime, which is considered b'chitza kontra papa, it's kosher. So therefore, you can't put it in that scenario of the 3 into the first group. And the only thing which will make it possible if the gap is more than 3, not exactly 3. The first group, the psul is the gap is exactly 3. Okay. So we can't put it together. Since if he says if the gap is exactly 3, it's possible. So why? So in the first scenario, the first midah, where we have a mechitza of less than 3, you could say 3. It will be the same thing. It will be the same the halacha, because if it's less than 3 or 3, if you have a gap of 3, it's always going to be possible. So therefore, you could put that all in one group, and then the second group will be if it's above 3. So you can put 3 in together with less than 3. That's the question of the Gemara. So so you can't have 3, because if it's equal, it's possible. So Gemara says you can't put it together. Because the reason is different reason. Because there's another whole principle involved over here. Even according to Rabbi Yisham, Gemara answers the first case, we talk about the thing which becomes possible because of love that we don't say love. That the gdi can't run through. That means that's the limit of love. The limit of love is when the goat goes through. So the psul of the reisha is when it's 3, when it's exactly 3, because the love expires at 3. But psul of the sefer, if the plank is exactly 3, so then if the plank is exactly 3, so then the reason why it's possible is also because the porutz is it falls under the principle of porutz ka'imid, which according to Rabbi is possible. So the reason of the psul when it's 3 tefachim plank, 3 tefachim space, falls under the category of parutz ka'imid, which is the second scenario. The psul of the first scenario is mitzad, because love would disappear, whereas the psul of the second scenario is because of posterity. So the same like parutz ka'imid. Yeah. Okay. No, that's that. I think we're going for a full hour. But anyway, let me try and finish this. Pachos mishloisha. I'm going to ask a question. If it's less than 3 tvachim, the first scenario, which is talking about that the planks are less than 3, and we're talking about lovud over there. If it's a gap of 3, if it's a gap of 3, it's lovud, it's possible. It's not considered mechitza. If it's less than 3, the gap, then it's considered mechitza. Yeah. So who are you talking about? This must be shitz rabbanon. That lovud is 3 tvachim. Mani rabbani, the only possible shleish amrin lovud, shleish lemrin lovud. That lovud applies only to less than 3, but 3 don't say lovud. Okay. Amos sefer. What about the sefer? Sefer it says kol shleish if the plank is 3, and from 3 till 4. So if it's 3, and as long as it's less than 4, so it says over there that if it's less than 4, so if it's less than 4, so we go on the principle of porutz ka'imid, and the second scenario, the halacha of the second scenario is that the whole mechitza gets ruined. Once it becomes 4 tvachim, then not the whole mechitza gets ruined. We each stage, the broken part or the fence part, has its own halacha, as you remember. The fence part will be fenced, and non-fence part is not fenced. But from 3 till 4, as long as it's less than 4, so again the whole mechitza becomes bottled. So now if you see that the whole, even the part which has a mechitza is bottled, the pashtus, it seems, the Gemara seems to think that it's because of the principle of lovud. No, we don't count it. If it's less than 4, it doesn't count for nothing. So, so how come we don't count the planked part as at least that part should be a shtickle mechitza? You could plant over there a vineyard next to a wheat. So it must be the principle of lovud, that on the wood itself, on the wooden part itself, we also say lovud, that it's like nothing. So also that comes out Reb Shimon Gamliel. It doesn't really work so well with lovud, but in the Hava we talk about right now, the Hava minute Gemara, Tosis has a question. It doesn't work so well. Even you will say it's Reb Shimon Gamliel, but it doesn't matter. But we have the question. The Gemara is going to give an answer, and once we have an answer, everything will be fine. So there we see it that for that lesson 4 is considered like nothing. So it seems to be suggest that we hold the Reb Shimon Gamliel. The Omar he says that he says we apply the principle to lovud even for less by less than 4. Because that's the machlokes of Shimon Gamliel and Rabbanan, whether lovud is less than 3 or less than 4. The imid Rabbanan, the imid Rabbanan, mishloisha vadabo, shloisha vabo chadu. Because according to Rabbanan, 4 and 3 is the same. You can't just ignore them. Just like 3, you don't say lovud, you don't ignore it. So 4 also, 4 and 4 also you don't ignore it. By 3 also don't ignore it. Not just 4 and 3, both you don't ignore. It's chadu. It's the same thing because the lovud disappears when it gets 3. Lovud disappears, therefore it can't be ignored anymore. Right. Amar Abai says, Midrash Rabbanan, Seif and Rabbanan. The whole thing is Rabbanan. Since the Reish Umaydi Rabbanan called him the reason why 4. There was this halacha that once it's 4, what happened? What happened with the story of 4? The story of 4 was that once it becomes 4, so even if you have broken parts, that part which is fenced, if it's as long as it's 4 tzvach and above, the fenced part is considered a fence. The broken part is the broken part, even when not the whole mechitza is good. If it's oimid merubal aparos, then the whole thing is considered fenced, even the gaps. If it's not oimid merubal aparos, so each part is considered individually. You consider it each individually, and it's not a bottle. Why is that? It's not. So Gemara says it's not to do with din of lovud. It's a din. Lovud, the din of lovud has less than 3, and 3 it disappears the din of lovud. But there is another din. Daled is a dover choshev. So that's why I said the Rabbana. We talk about the Rabbana. That we talk about less than 3. The major Rabbana, the Kol Misha connect. If you want to be matter that in that particular area, the area does not become bottle. You can plant over there that area. From one side to one thing, and the other side something else, is if you have 4, it's choshev. It's nothing to do with lovud. It has to do with a mokim choshev. There's a cloud, a daled tvorchim is the mokim choshev. Rabbi says the same Reb Shimon Gamliel, Reish Amar Shimon Gamliel. That's all Reb Shimon Gamliel. V'chil Amar Shimon Gamliel. Amrin lovud hanimil lemayla abu mata havalik b'chitza shagdoyim boikim boy. Le amrin on lovud. Right. So he said that then. But who's this? Yeah. So Rabbi says that the whole thing is Reb Shimon Gamliel, but except that lovud is 3, even according to Reb Shimon Gamliel, and 4 is because of chshivas mokim, like we said before. But even Reb Shimon Gamliel will agree over here to the Rabban. There's no argument over here, because we said it before. Read this principle that lemaila Reb Shimon Gamliel says lovud is lovud extend till 4, you can still apply the concept of lovud. But lamato, when the goats are able to run through, so that the fact that goats are able to run through, that destroys any lovud, and it's considered a significant gap. Basically, thanks. I'm trying to stop the.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I'm trying to stop.